I know. I know. That's what I'm saying. You're young at heart. I'm telling you. Before I got the younger.
It's a way of wearing. He's over 12 years old. He will hope that congratulations.
All right, come on. Over here. You might
I know it. I'm learning how to use it.
Hey, give me some cookies.
What do you want? Cookies?
Bring it in there all the way.
I just wanted to say hi.
I'm actually calling you, and I know right.
All right.
All the resources.
I'm so glad that St. Andrews is working air conditioning because when I checked the time on my phone instead of looking at the time, I saw the temperature and it's 96 degrees outside. So much cooler in here. Thank you, Father Rogers, for making that happen for us. We have a very great panel for you today. We are so excited to see so many of you here. Melissa and I were just chatting because in December we went to Washington, D.C. for the Dobbs case hearing, and we came back to St. Andrews and reported on what we had experienced, not just what we had learned, and the power and the passion that we felt standing on the steps of the Supreme Court. And I remember telling the group here that it felt like we were part of something monumental, something changing, something that for me, my grandparents prayed about for years and years and years. And here we were participating, observing, being part of a moment in history. And I'm very, very happy that so many of you have joined us to learn more about what that moment means for us today and for our future, for our parish, for our community, and for our nation. I would like to introduce our panel at this point. We are joined by some amazing people who are doing fantastic pro-life work in our community and are thinking about the challenges and opportunities that we as citizens face, and we as members of a faith community who believe that life is sacred also face. First, I'd like to introduce Father Rogers. To those of you who do not know him, he gives the briefest homilies in the diocese, also the most powerful at times, and he is in a strong leader for the St. Andrew's community. We are so grateful for his support. Next, we have Ben Ryu. He is a St. Andrew's parishioner. He married into the parish, I believe. He attended Benedictine College in Atchison, and he is an attorney, practices law on the Kansas side, but he studied theology and philosophy, and it continues to be a passion of his, which is why he has taken a deep interest and is excited to share some of his thoughts about how the overturning of Roe v. Wade through the Dobbs case affects us at the state level in Missouri, Kansas, and what that means regionally. Next, we have Dr. Kelly Bird. She's one of my new favorite people. I had the opportunity to meet her just a couple days ago. She's a pediatrician at a certain leading children's hospital in the metro region, and also serves with Alexandra's House, a organization committed to providing support to families who experience loss through pregnancy or shortly after pregnancy and or are facing challenging pregnancies. She has a very interesting is not the right word, passionate perspective that inspired me when I heard her speak for the first time a couple days ago. Melissa Oden is a dear friend and true leader. She is the leader, founder, director of the Abortion Survivors Network and an abortion survivor herself. She has taken the position, somewhat of a lonely position, standing up for people who have been victims of abortion but have, through the mercy of God, lived. Since the Dobbs case was overturned, the outreach to her organization that provides healing and support services to abortion survivors has skyrocketed, and I'll let her share more about that and what abortion does to not only the children who survive, the lasting visible and invisible scars, but also how their families in a post-Roe situation are looking to not just survive, but thrive and heal. Finally, we are joined by Susan Rice, who is the executive, Sonia, sorry. Susan Humphreys was at the other panel. Susan Humphreys is one of the authors of the bill on the other side of the state border called Value Them Both, which I hope we'll have a chance to talk about as well. Sonia is the executive director of the Parkville Women's Clinics, an organization so many of you know and I hope support. She has been there since 2005, right? And I thought, wow, she started when she was 10. That's why I'm good at my job. But Parkville Women's Clinic is more than what meets the eye, and I am so excited for you to learn more about the Parkville Women's Clinic. She is joined by her colleague Carla in the back, who has information about the Women's Clinic and the services they provide. We also want to thank the Respect Life Committee here at St. Andrews for providing so much support in the setup and refreshments. And I believe Mary's House was also involved, which is another amazing pro-life resource. But before we kick it off, I would, if we dive into the meat, I think we should pause for prayer, and I would like to offer the microphone to Father Rogers to lead us and guide our hearts and minds.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of our lives, for the gift of our faith, for the gift of the grace that you give us to persevere and to face life's challenges. We gather as believers this evening to face human life in gratitude for all of your gifts. Bless our gathering this evening. Open our hearts to your holy will and give us the grace to be even more committed followers of your Son and our Lord Jesus Christ, through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Can you hear me in the back? No? Higher? We need to turn it up?
Speak a little louder into the mic.
Speak louder, okay. Father knows, it's like he's not his first rodeo. Well, as that gets adjusted, I'm going to kick it off first with the amazing Ben Ryu. And he's going to share with us some of his thoughts on the legal aspects of where we were, where we are, and where we're going. Take it away, Ben.
I'm Ben Ryu. I did marry a parish. My wife became formally Mormon. My name was Mormons. Thank you, Father. That is true. And it was a wonderful wedding. So I do want to touch on some of the legal aspects. And I went to Benedictine College, and every year Benedictine sends a group of students on March for Life. I prayed a rosary on the steps of the Supreme Court building before the end of abortion, and it's incredible to me that it did end in my lifetime. I have friends who went to jail protesting the Roe v. Wade decision when it was actually released in Wichita, Kansas. So there's something here that is very powerful, and I think a lot of people have felt it in their lives on the day the decision came down. I know people watching that decision come down. A lot of people were, and for me at least, there was a noticeable tonal shift from sort of I made a comment to my wife that I didn't really let myself believe the justices would go through with it, even though the decision was leaked, and then they actually did. So, as far as the legal part of this, there's a lot of confusion about the Roe decision, how it happened, what it was based on, what the legal theory was, and how that was overturned. So, Roe was based on the 14th Amendment. Really, the decision came down out of an idea that the due process clause in the 14th Amendment puts an onus on the government to protect some rights more substantively. They call that substantive due process. And from that, the court, and kind of strangely, I actually agree with this. The court theorized that there was an implicit right to privacy, and I do think as Americans we tend to agree that there are things that are private in our lives. Now the question though is whether or not that right is enumerated in the Constitution. That's a crucial question because founding fathers had a theory that the federal government should be one of limited powers, and they made a crucial distinction between state government and federal government. And the federal government was required, I keep drifting down, I'm sorry. The federal government was to be one whose power was limited to those explicitly defined in the U.S. Constitution. And the state government was one of unenumerated powers, meaning that generally speaking, the state can govern without limitation except by political action, meaning the citizens of the states can decide what they think are good laws and what are not. But the federal government's limited, and the reasoning behind that was it was quite powerful. Theoretically, that power could be abused. So, long-winded way of saying that the question that was raised to the justices in the Roe decision was whether or not the right to privacy was one that was enumerated. And obviously they came down that it was. They said it was part of a sort of an infamous phrase, the penumbra of the 14th Amendment justified a decision that there was a right to privacy that the federal government could control and enforce. And it was kind of a negative right requiring the states not to restrict abortion. And part of this you do have to understand the history. The 14th Amendment arose out of the Civil War, a time when there was, quite frankly, horrible abuse of state power by the states. Many states were war fought over it. And it was a reaction to that. So when Roe was decided, almost any legal scholar you talk to does not defend Roe as a legal decision. It's a really terribly written decision. It does not really, frankly, even in law school, you're not even going to find many law professors who think Roe is well written, or even well reasoned. Casey v. Planned Parenthood, on the other hand, really took Roe and frankly kind of overruled Roe, which is something that is odd. And so it said Roe's reasoning is bad, but its conclusion is right. And so they articulated a new legal standard. Now, when Dobbs came along, they had to decide, they readdressed this question of, is there an enumerated power to privacy, or enumerated right to privacy? And they came down, no, there is not. And Alito, I think, who's the writer of the majority opinion in Dobbs, wrote an incredible opinion. It really is just a remarkable opinion. And he goes through and says, how we come to a determination of what is an enumerated power. He laid down a very clear line of reasoning that if it's not explicit, if it doesn't say the right to free speech, right, something that everyone can look at and say, I understand that, then we have to look and see what we've historically held and whether or not that's something that is protected in sort of an unenumerated way or an unexplicit way. And they said that it's not, that this is a relatively recent thing, that historically our English common law has not recognized the right to privacy in this way. And so it is not a power that is given to the federal government. That is an important distinction. And like I said, there's a lot of misinformation here. A lot of people are saying, well, the Supreme Court banned abortion. You know, no, they didn't. In fact, they specifically said they don't have the power to make this rule. They don't have the power to decide what happens here. The states have the power to decide here. And more importantly, we do. The incredible thing here is that we now have been given that power. The population of Missouri, the population of Kansas. Now we get to sit around in a room, look at each other, the people we know, our neighbors, and decide what should the law be regarding this issue. It's a highly divisive issue. It has been for years. But now, instead of me getting to argue or think about what 9 people in robes think about this issue, I get to go sit down with my neighbors and talk to them one-on-one and say, what do you think? And maybe they say, well, I don't think it should cover ectopic pregnancies, maybe something you've heard. A lot of people say, well, this Missouri law would ban ectopic pregnancy. Number one, I'm not a Missouri lawyer, but I don't believe it does. And number two, you can look at that person and say, that's horrible. It shouldn't do that. Let's amend the law. Let's change it to make sure it doesn't cover that circumstance. Instead of saying, boy, I hope next year the Supreme Court takes this up so that there's not that problem on the books. It empowers the people. That is an important Catholic principle too, because we as Catholics believe in the principle of subsidiarity, which means we believe that government should be at the lowest common level possible. Obviously, that's not always possible. You need higher levels of government to restore order. That happens in the Civil War. But generally speaking, government should be from the people, over the people. That's the principle that was articulated and adopted. I think it's very powerful. I'll close up with a contemporary issue right now that's happening in Kansas. You heard reference to the value that both of them. Just recently, the Kansas Supreme Court came down with a decision, Nauser v. Schmidt, in which they found that the right to abortion was contained within the Kansas state constitution, and that the right to abortion was broader than that articulated in the U.S. Constitution. And that's important because it means that if the U.S. Constitution is found not to contain that right, the Kansas Constitution still stands. And so the proposed amendment, which will be voted on in early August, theoretically will reverse that decision. And again, there's a lot of misinformation there as to banning abortion all out, requiring women to register. You hear all kinds of crazy things on every issue. This essentially does the same thing as the Dobbs decision. It restores that power to the elected officials, so that now you can say, I don't like my elected official. He voted in a way that I didn't like. I'm not going to vote for that person next time and hopefully change the outcome. So that again, I think is an important rule. It's significant as well for Kansas and Missouri, because here in Kansas City, there's a river and the state line runs along it. And that's right by the city. So right now in Missouri, abortion is illegal go into most circumstances. Again, I'm not a Missouri attorney, so I'm not going to talk about what circumstances. But suppose there was a circumstance where a person wanted an entirely elective abortion that had no medical basis. Well, it's illegal here in Missouri, but it's not in Kansas, so you can simply drive across the river and accomplish that goal. So this is an important difficulty that we're going to have to work out as a country and as states and as communities to decide what's important here. Thank you very much.
I just also want to acknowledge that we are joined today by a good friend of mine, Josh Hurlbut. He is a representative here in the state of Missouri from District 12, just north of us, and he is willing in the Q&A time answer any questions about the Missouri trigger law and anything like that. He's fantastic and is serving Missouri very well and is a staunch pro-lifer with 3 small kids, and they're just adorable. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kelly Bird, and she's going to be able to highlight a couple of the things that Ben did as well, and clarify some questions. Oh, you just want to rip that mic out of my hand. All right, are you ready? Are you ready? It's all yours.
All of this. Well, my name's Kelly Bird. I was born and raised in Wichita, so I'm a Kansas girl. Sorry, I don't know. I think this is a lot of Missourians, right? Ish, yeah. So I'm a general pediatrician, but I've practiced exclusively in the emergency department at a couple different children's hospitals in the area, and also have worked with Our Savior's House, which is kind of a separate entity that is near and dear to my heart and related but separate than what we're talking about here. I think the primary reason or thing that they wanted me to address into this group was the questions regarding pregnancies and abortions and the with ectopic pregnancy. Okay. I love that medicine and our Catholic faith align really nicely. It is beautiful that I don't have to go to work and wonder if my faith is going to contradict what I do when I practice. It's actually those that don't have the background that I have or some sort of strong Christian background that really should be struggling. Our faith makes it very clear that in the question of life of the mother, you can always choose to end the pregnancy early. And I make that distinction. I don't say abort the baby, terminate the pregnancy. The intent of an abortion is to go in and remove the baby. And you can think about that as a very traumatic procedure because 99% of the time it is. 100% of the time it is, really. When we are ending a pregnancy to save the life of the mother, that is a different circumstance, that's a different intent, that's a different goal. Keep that in mind with this. When the question is with the life of the mother, try to move ectopic pregnancies over under that column of life of the mother. Sure, so an ectopic pregnancy is any time baby's growing outside the uterus. That is typically what you hear about in a tubal pregnancy. However, that baby can implant anywhere within the abdominal cavity, really. We do see it end up other locations, along an ovary, along colon tissue, so anywhere other than the uterus. So when that occurs, it is a direct threat to the mother, and with time, and I've been asked before, well, how long, and that depends where the baby has implanted, it is necessary to save the life of the mother to end that pregnancy by removing the baby with all respect possible. The other examples, when you think about ending a pregnancy to save the life of the mother, keep in mind these are extremely rare. They are important to be aware of, but extremely rare. We're talking about less than 1% of abortions are due to saving the life of the mother, ectopic pregnancy, rape, and incest. So less than 1%. There are other conditions though. Uterine cancer is one, extreme pulmonary hypertension is another, so just really high blood pressure within those lungs. And again, we get mother as close to viability for baby as possible, and then allow for early delivery of baby. 23 weeks is a general age that you think about for viability for baby. Much younger than that, it's really just not feasible. But again, we are inducing mother, we are delivering baby in a respectful manner to save the life of the mother, knowing that the unintended side effect here is that baby will pass. That is not our intent though in delivering that baby. Therefore, that is not an abortion. Excuse me. Even the strictest conservative states, which I think Texas kind of wins that right now probably, allows for the delivery of the baby or the removal of the baby in the case of an ectopic pregnancy to save the life of the mother. Kansas, and I'm sure Missouri law, allow you to, I hate using terminate a pregnancy, but end a pregnancy to save the life of the mother. I hate it when people are afraid of discussing that because we will always protect mother as well. That is not an abortion. What was the other one? The rape and incest is a harder discussion. And whenever someone talks about, well, they should be able to abort because of rape, medically, we see, sure, teenagers, women come into the ER with stating they were raped and offered medication to terminate or to ensure that no pregnancy exists, we can put it that way. That one, for some reason, people kind of can swallow that one better. I very much argue that life begins at conception. That's not a Catholic fact, that's a scientific fact. It would be very difficult to find a true biologist, an educated individual who would argue that with you. You can try, but life begins at conception, not Catholic, not Christian, science. So you could argue it with that. I also then would push them back and say, sure, there are the instances where a woman comes forward immediately after the occurrence and states she was raped and concerned with pregnancy. However, would you answer them differently if she comes forward at 8 months or 35 weeks pregnant and claims she was raped and wants to terminate? Now is that valid? Now is that a reason? So I will say that as far as I know, Missouri does not exempt for rape or incest. And if people are uncomfortable with that, I'd ask them, okay, yeah, you can swallow it right now. You're okay with terminating immediately after or attempting to avoid a pregnancy. Does it still sit as well at 8 months? And usually the answer is no. So that's why I personally really respect that law, as I think most will, but that's the best answer I give them for that situation. Moving to Alexandra's house a little, I can try to explain that all more if it helps, but Alexandra's house is a perinatal hospice organization right in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. Alexandra's house takes care of babies who have been given a lethal or sublethal anomaly. The classic one that most people recognize is things like trisomy 13 or trisomy 18. Trisomy 21 is Down syndrome. So if any of those might ring a bell, those are conditions that are considered not compatible with life. I get defensive of that. They're already alive. You've diagnosed them with something, they're alive. They're not compatible for what you call life, and they're not compatible with probably a high school degree and a long life. However, they're already alive and diagnosed them. So a lot of times the women that are referred to us are young couples, happy couples, they're starting their family, and they went in for that ultrasound. They wanted to find out, is it a boy or girl, pink or blue, what are we gonna do? And oh my goodness, something's wrong. And the room gets really quiet, and the ultrasound tech slips out, and she brings the doctor back, and they say, we have some news. such and such is wrong with your child. And parents are still waiting to hear boy or girl. They're like, hold on, wait. And at that point, unfortunately, a lot of obstetric providers and ultrasound techs, they just kind of throw the towel in. This is not compatible with life. You need to terminate. And Alexander's House tries to swoop in those moments and say, hold on, this baby should be given any and every chance of life and support and comfort and respect and dignity that any other baby should have. We take them from the OB, we give them counseling, supportive care, help find them an OB who will support whatever they choose with the pregnancy. We're able to help facilitate them to deliver baby, if possible, if baby survives to delivery, to deliver baby, to bond with baby, to have pictures with baby, to nurse baby, to then grieve baby and bury baby, rather than have baby ripped from inside them. It is a much more natural grieving process and one that deserves a lot of dignity and respect. It is not encouraged enough. So I assume St. Andrews has a lot of young families. If anyone is ever in that horrible situation, just don't let them be led astray. That's a very emotional time. And when we are emotional, we are vulnerable. And these women are led astray far too often, and there are other choices for them. So we try to get a hold of those women as well. We offer counseling services, photography services, and then we cover all funeral expenses. So that's Alexander's House. Okay. We have refreshments in the back. Please don't let it go to waste. If you would like to kind of stretch your legs and walk on over there to the back and get a plate, please feel free.
That you're doing that before you give me the microphone. If y'all don't know Sarah, by the way, Sarah is my work partner, my newfound best friend that I didn't know that I needed in the midst of that. So I can give her as hard a time as I want to. You know, I am super grateful to see so many people here tonight. I think this is an important time for all of us to be together and hear truth. I mean, how many people in your social media list or maybe in your family, in your neighborhood, need to hear somebody like Ben talking about the basis of this ruling, right? Dr. Bird talking about what care of an ectopic pregnancy is, about how protecting the life of the mother is not an abortion, it's delivery, right? How many people in our world don't know about perinatal hospice care? Our world needs you to go forth after tonight and share everything that you hear. So Sarah, by the way, if you don't know her, works with me at the Abortion Survivors Network. We do education and policy work together. I wear a couple of different shoes. I do nonprofit work, healing and supporting victims of abortion like myself. But Sarah and I also go forth and work state by state and also at the federal level. We just had some legislation introduced today by Representative Nancy Mace out of South Carolina. Name the exact, come on boss, help me out.
You don't have the bill name, it's live.gov. I have the text that we did.
It's the Support Women Act, something similar to that. You'll find our name included on that bill as endorsers because we support women like my birth mother being given resources and support in our society. That decision of Roe versus Wade, too many women were told that abortion was their only option. You want to succeed in life? Have an abortion. If you didn't listen to the oral arguments on the Dobbs decision, and I'm sure Ben's nodding his head, Sarah had to listen to me on the plane going, oh my gosh. No way. Because some of the oral arguments were that we as a culture needed Roe versus Wade to stand. You might want to go back and listen to those arguments because they will light a fire under you. So we have this great opportunity to work together. So that's, Sarah is not just a great dresser and a wonderful MC. She also works with me in the day-to-day with things.
I have that answer, Bob.
Do you?
Standing with Moms Act.
Standing with Moms Act, check it out. It's going to change things, and I'm excited about that. Whatever side of the aisle people stand on, we should be able to come together and say, we should do more to support women in a time of need. Now's our great opportunity to do it. My sphere that I get to talk a little bit about though tonight is the unseen, unheard victims of abortion. The reality is that when I found out my story at the age of 14 about surviving a failed abortion, I never thought in a million years that there was anybody else like me. Lo and behold, we know statistically there are probably tens of thousands of people like me. Last night, Sarah and I had the great opportunity to look at the work that one of our interns is doing on the models of failed abortions. I can tell you that her number is going to blow people's minds, and you're going to see that come out very shortly. So statistically, we know that there are tens of thousands of abortion survivors. Through the Abortion Survivors Network, we've connected with over 600, but that's just a drop in the bucket with who I need to find. After the Alito leak came out, we had about 20 survivors approaching us for the first time. And that happens anytime abortion is in the news. Survivors of abortion and families impacted by it are triggered. And they go looking, right? Is there anyone else who survived an abortion? Is there help for someone who survived an abortion? And it also happens because we break through the media shame and silence. Earlier this week, Kelly and I were presenting with a bunch of media in a closed event, but I also met with ABC News. You might see that come out right before the August 2nd vote in Kansas. Sarah also had to call ABC News back for me today about something else they want to talk to me about. Pray for God's will in that. I don't know what it is. But the media, by and large, tends to silence people like me because with Roe versus Wade, we were a very uncomfortable truth for the world. So whereas people could look upon my life with hope, the media would say, we need to keep somebody like her quiet. So this has opened a new world for abortion survivors. So even since the ruling came out about 2 weeks ago, we've had again over 20 abortion survivors reach out to us. We've had family members reaching out to us. Most abortion survivors are actually raised in their biological family, not placed for adoption, because the child was never the problem. It was the circumstances. And so when child survives, they parent that child. But without healing and support, I can tell you that those circumstances that that family was under caused great stress and distress. So that's part of the work that we now do with the Abortion Survivors Network is serve women who have had failed abortions. And we serve entire families who are impacted by that. Our youngest survivors are 6 months old. So just recently, an adoptive family reached out to us who had seen me giving a presentation. And she's an adoptive parent. She said, I have no idea what we're doing. And I said, good news, most people don't. The other good news is we know a few things here at the Abortion Survivors Network. We can tell you how an abortion impacts that child physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. We're going to be here for your child throughout their entire life, and we're going to be here for you. We also now work with adoptive families. We single them out. We serve those adoptive families separately. We serve biological families separately. Because as you can imagine, those adoptive families need to go through a process of forgiveness towards that biological parent because they live with the impact of that failed abortion in the life of their child. So our youngest survivors are infants. I got to send some care packages to 10-year-olds last week. One of them who was really struggling with the Supreme Court decision, not because of the ruling, but because she saw people tearing stuff up and protesting and being angry. She said to her mom, why would anybody be so angry about this when it would save lives like mine? Think about that and encourage other people to think about that when they're busy being uninformed about the issue and throwing a fit. What if it was your 10-year-old child who had survived an abortion? What if it was your grandchild? How would you explain to them that any of this is okay? That is the world that I live in. The oldest survivors that are connected to us that we serve are in their 90s. So think about that. They are people who survived illegal abortions, at-home attempts to abort.
There are some very kind of famous people in the world who survived even coat hanger attempts to abort them. Pastor Jack Hibbs out of Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. If anybody follows Pastor Jack Hibbs, he's pretty amazing. He survived a coat hanger attempt to abort him. So when people want to shake a coat hanger at me, I always like to say, behind that coat hanger, I want to remind you, there was also a child. People also don't think about that either. And what I have found since Dobbs' decision is that we have had more survivors who survived before Roe reach out to us than any other. And what they are saying is, I finally have space to share my story a little bit. I've had so many survivors who survived illegal attempts to abort them or at-home attempts to abort who say, Melissa, it's my fault that Roe versus Wade was ever passed. Because I survived, they decided that something different had to happen. You never know who is sitting in your pew at church. You never know who was in your school. I mean, I know we've had a student connected at one of our local schools who was a survivor, and that's what we are here for. And I love that because we've even been able to talk about that, how we're here for pregnancy centers. I got to hold a 13-month-old baby not too long ago who survived both chemical abortion pills, because that is very much a thing, folks. When there's about a 2 to 8% failure rate under 10 weeks, and we have over 500,000 of those done a year, start running the math pretty quickly, because 2 to 8% means somebody like me. But what we find is if that woman isn't connected to a pregnancy center or somebody like you, if she finds out that she's still pregnant, she will go back to the abortion industry. And those children then lose their lives in a second attempt. And I can tell you that Sarah and I read through state to state reports, and I caught it in a state here recently, and you're gonna see us publish some reports about it soon. But we can tell that in that one state that there were probably in upwards of 50 children who survived abortion procedures the first time and didn't live to tell the story after that. So as much as there is hope to be found in every survivor's life and every family that we break the generational cycle of abortion in, this is also my reminder to you that we also can't be complacent about this. A lot changed with Roe being overturned, but there is a lot that we still need to do. And born alive survivors are a huge piece of that. Did I miss anything, boss?
First of all, this is fabulous. I hope you all are enjoying this. Thank you to Father Rogers and St. Andrews just for even opening this and having this idea and putting it together so quickly. Sarah, did you have specific questions for me?
No, I think
Okay.
everyone would love to hear about the resources you provide.
Sure. All right, very good. Well, so most of you have probably heard in the news about pregnancy centers, and not in a positive light. And so I would love to share with you about truly what Parkville Women's Clinic and the other 3,500 plus pregnancy centers across the nation, who we are and what we're about. Because we just have not been, we've not been given a good name. And so today, for those of you who don't know, our pregnancy center, Parkville Women's Clinic, provides lots of medical services to women. We just actually just started about a year ago offering sexually transmitted infection testing, which offers us a whole nother opportunity to really challenge the men and women who come in our doors for a different life. You may be thinking, well, why are you offering this service? Are you giving the okay, that they're sexually active? It's actually to the contrary. We want to change that. We want to have dialogue with them in the most intimate conversations about really their value, their worth. So many women that over my years just with even the opportunities that I had to sit down and talk with them, some of them have never been told that they have value, that they are worthy. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, have you ever thought about sex-free dating? And they just kind of look at you like, oh, you mean that's a thing? Yeah. It's like we challenge them to do better. And sometimes that's all they need, is somebody to empower them to change. And it's in those conversations then that we can bring about God's love for them, God's plan about when you take something like sex outside of marriage, what happens to that? You have unplanned pregnancy, you have emotional turmoil, and you also can have, sexually transmitted disease. And so we challenge them to think about it in a different way. And so that is something that we just started about a year ago and has really been taken off. And we are seeing a lot of women and men that are taking advantage of that service. But we also offer, like most of you probably know, life-giving ultrasounds that really give men and women just that window. You can say you're pregnant and take a pregnancy test, especially to the guys. That doesn't really mean a whole lot to them, but when you see that on the screen and you get to see that heart beating, it changes for a lot of people. And so we offer that service. We offer it every hour we're open. It is a very important part of what we do. And we really do have real registered nurses. I know I've been hearing, on the news that we don't really have real medical professionals. And so one day at staff meeting, I went in and said, hey guys, did you know that all that money and that certificate hanging on your wall really isn't real? And so we got a good laugh about that. But we have nurse practitioners, all registered nurses, all trained extensively in sonography. And our fatherhood director is actually here tonight, and he happens to be an MD. So there you go. Dr. Johnson, you might just stand up. I just wanted to say a little bit about that. We also, in talking about Dr. Johnson, we also have a fatherhood program. When I started with the pro-life movement back in 2005, about 16 years ago, we were so poised to be so concerned about saving that baby, which we should. We still want to do that today, right? But then it kind of changed, because then we were noticing, well, gosh, we're so hyper-focused on the baby that we're missing the woman and her needs and, ministering to her. And so we kind of shifted our perspective again. Well, who do you think is the most influential person in a pregnancy decision? Who do you think that is? It's the father. That's right, it's the man. So where are the ministries to advocate to him and to minister to him and to tell him, you know what, you're not the only one. You can do this. Come around him with resources. And so we just really, I started to begin to think about that's something we're missing. And so that's when our fatherhood program was started, because I really believe that was kind of the missing link. It doesn't take you very long to look at the news, right? With our shootings, our prisons. If you do your research and you go back and you look at the family dynamic of many of the shooters in today's news, they don't have a father. They didn't have a father positively impacting their life. This matters. Every social norm that you think about, in whether you're talking about obesity, whether you're talking about the high school dropout rate, there is a connection in so many times to the lack of there being a father in the home. So yes, we are Parkville Women's Clinic, but we are very much in support and advocate for the important role that the fathers play. And so I want to share that with you, and that if any of you are interested in learning more about how can I be involved, I didn't have a father, I want to be there, and help train some of these guys to help them to understand you can change. You can change the course of their life for the better. So talk to Dr. Johnson, he's in the back, or you can talk to Carla or myself, either way, because we need men to stand in the gap and to really help educate men. I don't think a lot of times they fully understand that they have a say. So many times they've been told, you don't matter, it's not your body, you don't know anything. And so a lot of times they come into the pregnancy center and they're, Dr. Johnson will meet with them or one of the other fatherhood mentors, and they'll just say, well, I don't, whatever she wants to do. And it's like, well, what do you want to do? And it's almost like, well, nobody's even thought to ask him what he wants to do. And so anyway, we are so excited. We have, I think, 15 fatherhood mentors with 3 more that are going to be trained the first part of August. So we are on fire for training and getting men trained for that part. Another part of what we do is adoption referrals. And so adoption is very near and dear to my heart. I was adopted at 3 months old. I was actually born in 73. And so, my birth mom was actually just 15 when she had me. And so she was a very brave girl at the time. And so I have a special soft place in my heart for birth moms, because to me, when you give the ultimate gift of life and you give that to a family, to me, there is no better gift than that. And so we have resources for adoption agencies that we work with, and also all of our client advocates are trained that every girl, every woman who comes through our door for services, and she is there for a pregnancy situation, she is shared with adoption. Even if she says, well, you know what, no, I could never give my baby away, although she's thinking about abortion. No, that would be too hard. I couldn't do that. We still say, yeah, but your circumstances could change. Right now, he's in the picture, the father, but you know what? 3 months, 4 months, that could change, right? So her circumstances can change. So we very nicely will talk to her and say, well, I know that you don't see that as an option today, and maybe it won't ever be. But while you're here, can I just give you these resources, and can I just tell you a little bit about abortion or adoption, excuse me. And a lot of times they have ideas about adoption that are not even true. We had one girl who said, well, I think that adoption would be way too much, and I couldn't afford to, have a family take my baby. She thought she had to pay for it. And it's like, oh, no, you don't pay that. You don't pay anything. And so anyway, we have an opportunity by educating men and women about the gift that adoption is. Now, there is no pressure. There is no judgment. Everything is just done in an educational way, because so much of the time, as you know, just from watching the news or going on the internet, how much different information is out there. I mean, it's so confusing. And so we want that opportunity when they are in our clinic to be able to love on them. We meet them where they are. We don't judge on the chapter of their life that we walked in on, right? And so we have such unique opportunities at the clinic. I kind of like to refer to the clinic as we're an ER, because honestly, we never know what is going to walk through our door. It could be something really small and they're happy about being pregnant, or it could be that they're devastated. We also have to watch for sex trafficking. We are trained in that. Abortion and sex trafficking go hand in hand. And so that is a very real thing. And yes, it does happen in Kansas City. And yes, it is currently happening. So teaching your children all of the apps, I could go for hours about all of that cyber kind of security things that are out there for your children, but it's just to be educated. Gosh, I'm trying to think what else I know you need to move on. If you have any questions at the end, please definitely ask, because I'd love to hear.
So now, before we get to the Q&A side of things, I'd like to give it to Father Rogers to talk about Catholic moral teaching and theology and how to weave this together to help guide our lives.
That wasn't the question you sent me. I don't think so. No. I do want to say that it's been wonderful to be a part of this esteemed panel. Really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me, Sarah, to be a part of it.
Father King is busy.
Father King is busy. You got it. Oh boy. Yeah, he's a second. No, King's wonderful. No problem. He's wonderful. You know, I see my role, having heard, gosh, hundreds of thousands of confessions and having walked with young people who have aborted and others who have chosen life and walked through this difficult path with them. I see my role really as trying to build a community of love wherever I am, so that a lot of married couples feel like they're an island living their Catholic faith. They feel very much alone. And I want to help create a parish where young people can find support. I want to have a parish where a young man could say, gosh, maybe God is calling me to be a priest. And then that community supports that. And we have to do this in spades with young women who find themselves in an unplanned pregnancy. They have to be able to feel that kind of support. Maybe they're not even attending church at that time, but we have a community that spreads out way farther than that, right? Because they know people who are worshiping here, who are, like I say, we're trying to build a community of love and trying to instill hope. St. Peter says in 1 Peter that we always need to be ready to give a reason for our hope, right? So I didn't know I was talking about Catholic morality, but of course, one of the problems today, of course, is that people don't believe in objective moral norms anymore, right? The Catholic Church teaches that that there's always an object of the act, and then there are circumstances, and then intention, and then circumstances. So if the object of the act is evil, abortion is one such example, killing the innocent unborn, then it doesn't matter what the intentions are or even the circumstances. It doesn't change the object of the act, right? But if the object of the act, let's suppose the object of the act is good, but your intention is evil, then it makes the whole act immoral, even though the object is good. But if the object is evil, it admits of no exceptions. And again, abortion is one such thing. So we have to build a community of love where, where people can feel supported. I was in an automobile some years ago now, traveling to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and with my priest friend, Father Zogby, we drive a lot of places together, and we crank up the radio, we play different songs on our, run it through the car, however that works, Spotify. And so I'm kind of a classic rock guy. I do the Styx and the Journey, Foreigner, and on the lighter side I do Bread and Ambrosia. And then, but he plays these crazy songs, these rap songs, right? And I hate them. But getting to my point here. Yeah, I prepared for this. Yeah, I didn't know the other stuff. So he started playing this woman named Nicki Minaj. Any of you know Nicki Minaj? I don't know who she is, but playing these rap songs, they were crazy. And so while he was playing the song, I wondered, who is Nicki Minaj? So I look her up, and she did an interview with Rolling Stone, and she said that she opened up about her abortion that she had in Rolling Stone and how she thought she was going to die. And she said, I was a teenager. It was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. She continued, I became pregnant when dating my first love, and the decision to abort has haunted me all my life. Nikki sang about it in her single, All Things Go, rapping, my child with Aaron would have been 16 any minute. In the third verse, she alludes to people telling her she wasn't ready to have a baby and asks for her unborn child's forgiveness. Please, baby, forgive me. Mommy was young. Mommy was too busy trying to have fun. Now I don't pat myself on the back for sending you back, because God knows I was better than that. Listen to people who told me I wasn't ready for you, but how would they know what I was ready to do? And, you know, to stay on that music theme, there was a woman in one of my parishes named June Walsh. And June just passed recently, just a few weeks ago. Beautiful lady. And June volunteered at Catholic Charities when she was young. And she had worked with young women, some of them thinking about, you know, not always adopting, some of them trying to convince this one young woman to keep her child, and if not, to give the child up for adoption. And it was kind of a long process. And she finally convinced the young woman to do so, and she adopted this child. And her main thing was, you don't know what this child can be. You don't know what God's plan is for this child. And so she adopted this little boy, she named him Steve, and Steve grew up to be Steve Walsh, who is the lead singer of Kansas, Dust in the Wind, Carry On Wayward Son, all of that stuff. But she could never envision, what her child could be. And there's a lot of stories like that. You don't have to be a rock star. I know that's a music thing. But the point is every single person is unique, special, irreplaceable, part of God's plan. And we can never forget that. And we need to build a community where people feel supported and loved.
Hard to follow that, let me tell you. There are note cards in the center aisle with pencils, and if you have a question, please feel free to write it down, pass it up to the front so that we can keep the questions flowing. And we only have one microphone, so we are live streaming this, so that this will be you will be able to go back and watch it again if there's something you missed or you want to share with a friend. I believe it'll be found on the St. Andrew's Facebook page for the website. We do have one question. Wait, hold on. I'm supposed to be asking you guys questions to tie it all together. Actually, Dr. Bird, Sonia, question for you guys. Since the overturn of Roe v. Wade and the Missouri trigger law, what differences have you seen in your practice? Dr. Bird, Sonia, is there a difference in the population of people coming in to see you? And maybe you can comment on abortion pill reversal. Anybody want to take that first? One of you has to. I remember which one.
Yeah, so something that we have started to see since Roe was overturned is we really have seen an increase in the panic and the anxiety of women needing to find the abortion pill, needing to find an abortion. There is a lot more urgency in that. We also have started to receive tons of calls from out of state. So all over Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, I'm sure I'm missing some, but so that has been really unique. The other thing is just this week, we noticed that we got really eerie quiet. Like our appointments were maybe 3 a day, where we had I mean, we were slammed before that. And so we talked to a pregnancy center in Arkansas, and they actually were seeing the same thing. I was at an executive directors gathering today, and another one of the directors said, you know, kind of the same thing. And so sometimes when we are slow, I tell my team, you know, guys, this is God's little gift right now, because we know this doesn't last. And that's typically what happens. And so we are using, you know, this week, we use that time to really prepare. Talking about APR, which is short for abortion pill reversal. I don't know how many of you know about that or have heard about that. That is a protocol that is used, it's been used, I think, since 2016. It's 2 doses. So a woman wants to, you know, she gets the abortion pill, she takes that very first dose. And Dr. Johnson is back there, so if I have questions. The first dose is mifepristone, right? Correct? Okay. And if she takes that dose, like many of them, they're like, oh no, what did I do? Like, I want to change my mind. Then they can, if they act very quickly, the best thing is for them to reach out to us or to the APR hotline within 24 hours. I think it's 24 to 72, but the sooner the better. Then they can be seen with a doctor, but also they can be given progesterone. And progesterone has been around for 50 years, I believe, and is completely safe. And so anyway, we got trained in that protocol because we knew, you know, what was coming. The increase, we have seen a huge increase in taking of the abortion pill. And, you know, you think, well, you know, Missouri is abortion free. Well, that is true. However, they can readily get the abortion pill easy peasy. There is a website, and if you want to do some homework, look up plancpills.org. Go on there, and they will tell you 3 ways to get the abortion pill. And they also will tell you that, I mean, I was just aghast at what they are telling women. They're telling women that if you do take the abortion pill and you have a complication and you have to seek medical, you know, go to an ER, you don't need to tell them that you took the abortion pill. They will never know. They will just think that it's a miscarriage because it's the same process. There's no blood test that they can give you that will make it, you know, that they will know. So there's no reason to tell them, you know, your past history. That is the information, that is the medical care that they are, you know, are sharing with women. And I was just so appalled. So anyway, APR is 68% effective. I believe there are over 3,000 children that are happy and healthy that have been born thanks to APR. You will see if you do any kind of research, there are some people that say, you know, no, it doesn't work. Now, I believe that the American Academy of OBGYN's APLOG actually endorse it. So there is that as well. But anyway, what'd you say? Ish, yeah. But anyway, I think the stats, you know, and that there is very little, if any, kind of risk. I don't believe to date there have been any babies that have been born with any kind of birth defects, because that was my question, was, you know, are the children born healthy? And to my knowledge, that is the case, so.
So mifepristone is an anti-progesterone. So their goal with that is to avoid implantation. Progesterone is a naturally occurring hormone. Women who go into premature labor,
It's utilized to help keep that baby in place, keep that placenta working, keep everything going as it should. So I don't see how in the world there would be a negative side effect to it when given to a mother. I've been impressed with how sneaky abortion agencies, abortion facilities are. Girls come to the ED like literally afraid to admit it. They would rather tell you anything than that they went to have this procedure done. And you have to tease it out of them. And it's not just fear of admitting it. You wonder, like, what have they been told? Why are they hiding it so much? Like, we're in a very friendly, safe place. You're having horrible vaginal bleeding and cramping. Just tell me what's going on. And you have to tear it out of them. And it's this horrible shame and guilt with it. So yeah, I don't see any complications to the abortion, the reversal. The studies that they did to attempt to prove that the abortion pill worked, this is how evil some of these people are. If it didn't work, they put them in this study and said, okay, if it doesn't work, we'll either just go in manually and abort the baby, or just kind of keep giving it to you until eventually it happens. So like, there are some very evil people involved in this process. I can't say a lot to how the laws have changed. I practice both in Kansas and Missouri. Kansas, it doesn't change and it won't change until August 2nd. So if you do know any Kansas residents, we really need to value them both passed. It's essential. I know I'm talking to Missouri, I'm so sorry. But if you know Kansas residents, I mean, please push that issue as much as possible and be sure they're reading reliable information about that. For Missouri, I haven't seen it personally affect my practice. I can tell you that the crossing state line thing is very, very real. My husband's an oncologist. He's also at a very large hospital. And if you get the wrong people, the wrong social workers trying to shift states up and forth, back and down, side to side, it's real. They will get you where they want to get you to get what they want. So that's it's not a dream. We're not making that up. It is very real. Parental consent, for some reason, when it comes to sex, you're an adult. I don't know why. I don't know who came up with that. That's so silly. So in Kansas, if we don't pass value them both, one of the laws that will fall is the requirement for a minor to inform an adult before she has an abortion. So picture it this way. You have a little girl at home, and she's a teenager. They don't talk to you anyway. But all of a sudden, her tummy hurts. She's like, yeah, maybe my period's really bad. My tummy hurts. And you can't really get her to tell you what's going on. But she's getting sick enough that you're like, oh, gosh, what's going on with you? And she's like, don't worry, Mom. It's just a tummy bug. I don't, whatever. I don't want to talk about it. Would you treat her differently, your teenager crying in her room with pain or bleeding or vomiting, if you knew that 2 days ago she had an abortion? You would. Let's be real. That girl might not want to tell you that she went and had that, but as an adult who's then taking care of her in that aftermath, it is absolutely essential you know that information. It's going to affect her quality of life, her care that she receives. The fact that a physician, they call themselves, does that procedure and discharges her home without appropriate follow-up is malpractice. It should be. Anytime you do a procedure on an individual, you have to tell them, here's the follow-up. Here's what you need to do. Watch for blank, blank, blank. See me if blank, blank, blank. Not doing that is not meeting our standard of care. How in the world they could justify telling a 15-year-old, just go home and take care of yourselves, knowing that that parent at home that she's living with has no idea. And it happened. It can't happen right now. We still have it, but it's real. These girls don't want to talk about it. They don't want to tell you about it. So a parent not knowing, it's going to happen. If we don't pass value them both, it will fall, and you will not know. Teenagers keep secrets. You potentially won't know. So
That's parental consent.
Ben, do you want to comment real quickly? I have a little stack of questions.
As far as parental consent goes, at least in Kansas, and this goes to that idea of the state not being able to interfere with an abortion right. So right now there are laws in the books about parental consent, but if you say that the Constitution forbids a state from interfering with an abortion right, well then automatically any law that would interfere parental consent is not constitutional. And so that I think is why you're looking at that value of both amendment, because otherwise the logic would be parental consent interferes with abortion, therefore it's unconstitutional. So I certainly echo, and I would say that every time I drive up to the courthouse, I see warring signs of vote yes, vote no. This is a very, very contentious issue right now in Kansas. And I would encourage you, when you live close enough, I'm sure you know one or two Kansans. I would encourage you to point them in the right direction. There's a lot of misinformation about that value of both, that it bans abortion. You make a text that clearly does not do that. It just, again, like the Dobbs decision, it restores that power back to them.
What happened in the marriage, right?
Yeah, a lot of things would be different. Yeah. You got this question, please explain the principle of the double effect, how it applies. Typically, this principle, at least applied with the instances of abortion, is that you've got this, the classic example is you have a child in utero, and at the same time you have this cancerous growth in the uterus. And you know that by removing the cancerous growth, the child is also going to be aborted, but that is not your intention. So your intention is to remove the cancerous growth, understanding that there's this other effect that's going to happen, which is it's going to end the child's life. If you were intending to end the child's life, that's called abortion. If you're intending to remove this cancerous growth, realizing there's this double effect, this other effect that the child's life is going to end, that is morally permissible.
Okay, to follow up on one thing, John Stowers, will you please stand up, please? He is running a website on the Kansas side, on the archdiocese.kck.org, value them both for Missouri. That is a resource for people on this side of the state to go and to learn more about why that amendment impacts us here in Missouri. We've heard time and time again that people cross the border to run errands, and abortion is not an errand. But we do know that people are traveling across the border, and if that amendment doesn't pass, Kansas could become a premier destination for abortion. Yes, briefly, please.
There is something we can do here in Missouri. We can help fund some of the last minute advertising. There's about 18 days left before the polls close in Kansas. So if you go to valuethemboth.com, or if you look up archkck.org and Value Them Both for Missouri, you can see some of the stats. One of the stats that didn't come out here, I just got from Chuck Weber this afternoon, was that half of all abortions in Kansas right now are Missouri girls and women. So this matters for us. This matters greatly for us. So yeah, the website valuethemboth.com, you can go straight and donate, and they can use the funds there. It's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And then clinicians, you can be thinking about this, looking for Christian or Catholic clinicians that practice with relate to vaccines and fetal cells. So think about that. Next question.
I am going to talk about Value Them Both for just a minute. So some people know this about me. I'm always looking for one more thing to do. Just kidding. I'm not. But those things find me. And I've been working on the Value Them Both amendment since about March of this last year. People know me from public appearances, but what they don't know is I'm often behind closed doors doing a lot of things, like strategic communication, coalition building. That's how I got to know Dr. Bird, because we grew a coalition of about 250 medical and mental health providers in Kansas who support the Value Them Both amendment. So what I want you to understand is we're talking about the amendment, and Ben was starting to touch on this. You know, the Supreme Court ruling in 2019, when they found that quote unquote right to abortion in the state constitution, what it did was render every single law passed over the last 20-some years to be presumed unconstitutional. So that's what Ben was talking about. So far, they picked off dismemberment abortion. So that's how this all came about, is because an abortionist challenged the dismemberment law in Kansas. And they said, oh, by the way, we're going to allow you to do that because, oh, we found it right in the state constitution. Since that, there's been a 17% increase in the number of dismemberment abortions in Kansas. A dismemberment abortion is when you tear a baby apart when they're alive. As I talked about the other day, I have survivors who have survived dismemberment abortions. I've seen it in their records. I run it past the doctors. It is a miracle when it happens. A lot of times there's usually a twin who is involved in that. So they tear one baby apart limb from limb and don't realize that there's a second one also there. So 17% increase in dismemberment abortions. The next law that they picked off was clinic regulations. So safety and inspection at abortion clinics. Is that extreme to expect an abortion clinic to be sanitary, to be regularly inspected? If you want to look up, there's some interesting cases in the Kansas City area of an abortionist who was sanitizing his instruments with home grade dishwashing detergent. Okay? So when we talk about the value of them both amendment, this is about common sense. The next law we know that they are attempting to pick off right now is face-to-face visits for women when they go and they're seeking the chemical abortion pill. So we know that that is in process right now. So that's what it means to be presumed unconstitutional, is one by one, laws are challenged and those laws fall unless the value of them both amendment is passed, because then we can pass those laws, we can reinstate the laws on clinic inspection and dismemberment abortion, and if they would be successful right now on those face-to-face, we could have that reinstated. So when people are saying, oh, this is a ban, no, this is about common sense regulation and protecting the laws that were passed at a bipartisan level. So that's my little bit about that. Do you want me to pass down to them about providers?
Dr. Kelly, and it is about fetal cell vaccines and finding doctors and pediatricians that will listen to parents and wait.
Okay. There is this because someone is trying to avoid certain vaccines that were created from aborted fetal cells? That's typically why this question comes up. There are, and I have it's actually a statement from the Vatican regarding this. Oh gosh, don't quote me now which ones it is. Certain manufacturers of certain vaccines did and very freely disclose that they used aborted cells. They are not only able to tell you that they did, but what types of cells, eye tissue, lung tissue, etc. The reason for the abortion and the age of the mother. They can tell you all that stuff because it's necessary for the research they do to get these vaccines licensed and qualified. If you were truly interested in avoiding those specific manufacturers, the specific pharmaceutical companies, with the exception of one vaccine, you are able to do that. There are alternatives. It's very difficult to find them. However, part of that statement from the Vatican is that you are so removed from that primary evil that you can feel completely free from your conscience to utilize those vaccines because you are, my goodness, so far removed from the initial evil. No one should feel like they are supporting that manufacturer or they can't vaccinate their child because of that original evil. If you still do, if you're like, no, I don't want to touch it, I don't want to go near X manufacturer, fine. You can, for the most part, avoid it. However, the Vatican has said you are so far removed from that initial evil, you can in free conscience use those vaccines. So. And
And then I think this should be our last question until we all gather around for snacks before we clean up. And that is, how can pro-life supporters come alongside pregnant women and their partners, the fathers of their child in need, who will now decide to have their babies? And this is one, I think, that, what is our call to action leaving here tonight? How are we going to walk out in faith, in charity, in forgiveness, and be the change we wish to see in the world, be the people who had room for Mary and Joseph at the end, right? How do we change this? And I think that there are a lot of ways, but let's do I think Father has noted that we are creating a space here at St. Andrews, that we see a mother with that little bump, that we extend support, love, and grace, and ask her, what is her name, right? How is she doing? Do you want a cup of orange juice with us after Mass? Donut Sunday, sponsored by That Man Is You, every third Sunday, or first Sunday, I can't remember which. I'm sure I'll give you lectured on that. First Sunday, I can't read it. Oh, it's Wednesday mornings with us, not donuts. But we're going to create a space for them, and we're going to be a shining example. When the Dobbs decision did come out, I remember feeling all kinds of feels. A lot of people don't know this about me, but Dr. Bird might empathize, but I have a sister, my sister Nancy. She was born microcephalic with cerebral palsy, which means she did not have a strong chance of living. My parents told us one day that our baby, God was sending us a special baby, and we were going to love our baby and take care of our baby as long as God let our baby live with us. And she changed our life, but she never walked. She never spoke a word. She lived to be 33 years old and died 2 years ago. And so I wish that we had had some of these amazing resources that Dr. Bird and her team are providing. I wish that people didn't stare at me and my family like we were crazy. And I understand that when you're facing a challenging pregnancy or have a special needs pregnancy, that family needs support, let alone a regular pregnancy. So we should create all the space in our heart to do that. We have amazing resources here, but if we have a round robin, if we could do just one thing, Father, what is the one thing? We'll pass it down the line.
Go first. No, it's okay. They get time to think about it. That's good. I think one thing we could do is change the language we're using. So when I've seen this really change a lot of hearts. You see a woman who's pregnant, she's not going to be a mom. She is a mom. You're not gonna have a baby. You have a baby. So I guess just changing our language, talking about that can make a big difference.
I guess my thought is talk to your neighbors. This is now it took 50 years to get this decision changed and to put this ball in our court. And within hours of the Dobbs decision being released, you heard all kinds of people who were in favor of Roe v. Wade saying things like, well, fine, now I guess what's going to happen to all these women, you only care about fetuses, you don't care about children. What support groups exist for these children? How are you going to take care of them? Now they're just going to be a bunch of teenage mothers who can't support their children. And women like these and fathers supporting all kinds of incredible programs that help these people, but how do these people get there? We have a space in the church where we say we're going to build a community of love. But if you don't go to church and you don't know anyone who's able to reach out to bring you in here, that doesn't do a lot of good. Which means we need to be the kind of person who has already dug a well before we're thirsty with our communities to be able to be the kind of person that someone in trouble is going to go talk to, who can then be referred to the services that they need. And so I think right now we have an incredible opportunity. The pro-choice crowd in a lot of ways blew their credibility on this issue. And now is our chance. And they did that by shouting abortions and saying that these are wonderful, beautiful, holy things that we've done. You should be proud of your abortion instead of recognizing the reality that it's a deeply sad thing. We have a unique chance in our country's history to show that we can fill that void. Because the alternative, this is a problem. It's never going to go away. Mistakes that young kids make in becoming pregnant, it's never going to be a problem. It's going to go away in our country. And so we have to be able to say we can provide a better alternative for you than the other side offers. And we're only going to do that if we're in our communities and we're the kind of people that can be trusted.
I think echo what Father said. I think our children are incredibly absorbent of everything we say. And I hate the idea that, when you look at the curve of our children and how many of them are staying in the Catholic Church and following Catholic principles and leading a good life, it's just going down and down and down. And we have a lot of children that we can raise the right way to get that curve going back up. And so kind of like he said, when you see a pregnant woman, she is a mother. And when you see the siblings in the room with her, they are big sisters and big brothers. I just had a kid today in the ER that mom's pregnant. I'm like, you're a big sister. Are you going to be a good big sister? You are a big sister. Like, trying, and the mom's looking at me. But yeah, you can. And when we talk to parents at Alexandra's house, it's their siblings understanding, like, we have to make funeral arrangements. We have to order a small coffin for your child because they're alive and they might not be for much longer. And their siblings thinking, but wait, I thought it just kind of goes away. And wait, what? No, there's a reality behind that belly, and just pushing on that young generation and helping to stamp on them as young as possible the reality of that life. So
I have two things, and one of them I just want to build off of what Dr. Bird was talking about. We have to not be afraid of suffering. And I know that's not what you want me to say, but I've been there and I've done that. And if you know my family very well, you will know that I have not been spared suffering in my life, and not just from surviving an abortion, but my youngest daughter was born with significant health needs. Many people probably remembered when my Ava had her little tube in her nose feeding her for months, how we went through OT, PT, all of the things. We live in a world that says that my Ava should have been aborted. But when you see my Ava running around the playground, she's a smile on legs. I guarantee you, if you know her, right, that's the best description for that child. Smile on legs. She has meaning and value no matter how her life began. And no one ever could have imagined who my Ava is going to be. And yes, I was counseled time and time again that I should abort a child, not knowing what her future would hold. So don't be afraid of suffering, because I will tell you, I am a better person for every suffering I have endured in my life. But the other point I want to make to that is that I think the most important thing I want to give you the marching orders tonight about is healing. Every single one of us in this room have been impacted by an abortion some way or somehow. And I would suspect most people keep it a secret. Now is your time to heal what has happened in your life. For maybe what you said or you didn't say in somebody's life. For the actions that you took or you didn't take. People live with this for decades. And so even if it wasn't you who had the abortion, the reality is you have probably been touched by it somehow. And I want you to know Project Rachel, Rachel's Vineyard, going to the pregnancy center for abortion healing. If you know somebody who's been impacted by a failed abortion, sending them to the Abortion Survivors Network, right? We have so many incredible opportunities for people to find healing. And I truly believe the more we heal as a society, the more people will be able to handle their trauma and their emotions in a more appropriate manner, if you know what I mean.
Lastly, trying to sum this up in one that I would really like to see is there to be unity between the churches and, pregnancy centers, because there is so much work, but we have so many programs and so many ways that we can empower, that we can educate, that we can support men and women. And so if churches will unite with pregnancy centers and be able to send women to us, to send fathers to us, so that we can minister to them, that partnership is so valuable. We just launched Making Life Disciples just a couple months ago, and that is doing exactly that. It is helping the church to be the church to these women and these men because they need a church home. That's one of the pieces of information that we ask is, do you have a faith? Do you have a background? So we engage them in that conversation because we know at the end of the day, the most important thing is where they're going to spend eternity. If they have a faith, if they have a belief in God, I mean, that is the most important thing. And so we can minister to all of these needs. We have a unique opportunity, but we want to plug them in to your church and to other churches. And so Making Life Disciples is that kind of program to where the churches and the pregnancy center, we work together because it is, you know, like everybody has said here, it's a lot of work, but together, gosh, I mean, think of the things that we can do. The pro-life movement, what a culture for life, and to really to have abundant, full life for everybody.
Father, would you send us forth with a closing prayer?
The Lord be with you, and may the blessing of Almighty God come upon you and remain with you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Go in peace.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Please grab a snack. If you have kids in the child care, grab them, because I'm sure those folks are ready to grab snacks too. Thank you.
Somebody